Hello and welcome to Microsoft Mechanics Live. Coming up on the show, we're going to take a look at recently announced updates across SharePoint and OneDrive for Business from the leader of SharePoint and OneDrive, Jeff Teper. And we're going to demonstrate how you can quickly migrate into Office 365 with a new SharePoint migration tool, how SharePoint and OneDrive power the sharing and collaboration experiences across Office 365, the deeper integration in Office 365 experiences from bringing things like Planner and Forms and Stream directly into SharePoint, and also conversely bringing the SharePoint pages, news, and files into things like Microsoft Teams. And finally, we're going to show you new tools for admins to manage your sites with updates to the SharePoint Admin Center. But first, please give me a warm round of applause for Jeff Teper, CVP.
Thank you.
Of SharePoint, OneDrive, and on the Office team. So, Jeff, we've been driving the vision with, you've been driving the vision with SharePoint and OneDrive at Microsoft for a long time now. What's behind all the recent updates?
Yeah, the team has been working pretty hard. I think many people know about 18 months ago, we had a big event called The Future of SharePoint where we outlined how core SharePoint was in Office 365, delivering content management and intranets across the suite. OneDrive, of course, giving you anywhere access to your files, not just in SharePoint, but of course your personal OneDrive as well. And we have been rolling out updates about as fast as I can ever imagine since over the last 18 months. Big set of announcements this week, 11 different blog posts out of the OneDrive and SharePoint team. So a lot of great value for customers.
We've done a lot in terms of making it also easier in terms of being able to move to OneDrive or SharePoint. But before we talk in terms of the tools for migration, what are some of the updates that we've worked on the OneDrive side in terms of Office 365? And maybe we should actually show the migration to show how you actually get to it.
I actually think, you know, as you said, we want to show both the end user side of this and the IT side of this.
Okay.
But if we sort of switch up to the screen, we can see that we've got the UI for the new SharePoint migration tool we announced this week. The idea here is whether it's a file server or a document library on a SharePoint site on premises, you'll be able to move that to the cloud with a first-party tool. We've got lots of great partners doing third-party tools for more advanced migrations, but people said, hey, I really want to get going and grab this one file server, put it in the cloud, and get the new user and IT capabilities. And so this is the UI. You pick a data source, you pick a site, and then you go. And in the interest of time, we'll do the Julia Childs thing and assume all our content's up in the cloud.
Yeah, so now once we're in OneDrive for Business, then your world opens up and compared to maybe what you were doing on a file share.
Yeah.
So why don't you show some of the things that are new in terms of the user experiences in OneDrive?
Yeah, so we've got the new OneDrive Sync client that we've had out for about the last 18 months or so. That has gotten incredible adoption, and you can see in the Windows Explorer, I can see SharePoint sites, so Contoso's marketing and strategy and planning, but I've also got my, my personal OneDrive, and I think it's sort of fun to go in and see the properties on this. And we've got 644 megabytes in the cloud, but only 18 megabytes on disk, and that's because of the new Files on Demand capability we're releasing with the Windows 10 Fall Creators Update next month. What this does is it lets you browse all your files in the cloud, your personal files, your work files, your individual OneDrive, SharePoint sites, in the Explorer, in the apps that use the Explorer, the command line, so you can do a dir, and intelligently sync those down when you need them. You, of course, can choose to bring them down, but this way you only have access, you only take down the stuff you actually want on your machine. So that's Files on Demand, which is a great new capability we're bringing.
And it's great because you can go granularly at the file level, at the folder level, whatever structure you want to actually pull down for local files, you can do that so they're syncing and staying locally on that machine. Yeah. Like you saw here, you had several megabytes of file that are sitting in the OneDrive in the cloud effectively, and only a few megs that were locally on the disk.
And it's particularly good for SharePoint because you don't want to necessarily sync entire SharePoint sites down.
Right.
Even, I go to the SharePoint sites that we use to build Office and SharePoint. These sites are used by thousands of people who are putting documents all the time. I want to browse them and see the regular meeting folders on my PC, but I don't necessarily want to take the work of 3,000 people syncing down to my client. So it's great, what I do is sort of browse them all, and maybe if I'm coming to an event like this, I'll take the latest meetings, take that folder offline so I can read it on the plane. Next thing I thought I'd show is sharing. This is something that we're really excited about. And by the way, I didn't talk to it, is you can see these check marks for things that have been synced down and the little cloud for the documents that are in the cloud. Let's go ahead and take one of these European files and go ahead and share it. And this brings up the new sharing dialog for Office 365. Same sharing dialog across Windows and the Mac, the web versions of OneDrive and SharePoint, and it's really simple. So I can go ahead and share that, at j@j2.com and set that and decide what kind of link they should get. Is it anyone or is it specific people? Do I want them to allow editing, set the expiration date? This is really key. We've heard from a lot of people, make sharing in Office 365 much more simple so users understand it. And one of the key things, I was just talking to a big customer of ours a couple hours ago, and the key thing here is to help people move away from attachments, because you get attachments of files in different people's email inboxes, you don't have the latest version of the truth, you're not on the same page, you can't, the document forks, and so this is a way we can send a link, people can do real-time co-authoring inside and outside their organization. We introduced this week a secure external sharing capability, so you don't have to get an account as an outside user, you get a one-time passcode you can use. So a lot of detail, obviously, around sharing simplicity, but we think the combination of files on demand and this new sharing dialog is a huge leap this week.
Very cool. So here we're in Windows, and this is all kind of native stuff that you can see within File Explorer, but why don't we move to the web and show what's new there in terms of OneDrive and the experience for users in the web?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the new updated OneDrive web user experience. You can see we've changed some of the icons and so forth to align with the new Fluent design paradigm across the company. One of the things we talked about this week, I'm going to bring up an Adobe Illustrator file. It's one of 276 different file types we support in OneDrive and SharePoint. So you don't need users can see this Adobe Illustrator diagram without having that application on their machine. And we've got that from everything from 3D models to medical images like X-rays and MRIs, and markdown files and zip files and just a ton more.
Right. Very cool.
Next thing I thought I'd show is some new file analytics capability. Let me hover over this product overview PowerPoint. I've published this out to people, and I want to know if anybody's read it before I go to the meeting. And sure enough, with this new analytics view, I can see this file's popular with my colleagues. Naomi viewed it, CJ viewed it, Randy viewed it, Steven viewed it. So I go to the meeting, and I now can expect that people have read my document, and we can be more efficient in getting going with the meeting. Or if I see them and run into them in the hallway, I can ask them for feedback. Last thing I thought I'd show within this user interface is some of the work we're doing for IT and security. So I've got this inventors list. Let me go click on that. Whoop, I didn't mean to click all the way through it, but you saw how fast the Word web app showed up. Let me go ahead and share that. And I will also send...
It was like an unintended demo of the new performance enhancements in the online apps.
We've got dramatic improvements in the new web app. So I'm going to share to somebody outside my organization, j@j.com, and you can see a red message has shown up. This contains sensitive information, can't be shared with people outside your organization. So I'll click on the policy tip and see I violated a DLP policy by going and sharing a file with social security numbers. So this could be a case where the IT group would say, gee, we'd like this group of people to have external sharing to the latest version of the truth with co-authoring inside and outside the organization. That's a good thing, but we want to make sure that it's not content that violates our policies, such as leaking out some sensitive information.
Right, and if you're not familiar with data loss prevention, basically you set up policies, so we have sensitive information types, in this case for social security numbers, but you can use credit card information, bank SWIFT codes, a lot of other things to be able to scan all the files that get stored up into OneDrive or SharePoint and make sure that users are aware of those files maybe violating those policies, or you can even just look for traffic on those and not enforce the rules like we have here.
Great. Yeah, we use it a lot, and it's critical to a lot of customers. Next thing I wanted to show, is some work we're doing around protecting files. This is a top of mind issue for people with things like ransomware and so forth. And so this is a brand new capability that we announced is coming this year, this week. And you can see, if I look at my files, they've all been given these funny names. That means some piece of malware has gone in and maybe encrypted these files on my desktop. And in the past, that would have been a big issue, and we saw a lot of that with things like the WannaCry incident. We thought, gosh, we have a solution to this problem. If you store your documents in the cloud with OneDrive, we will keep, we keep backups, so we can do better than people have done with local files and file servers. And so let me take a look, and I can see just about exactly where the trouble started. And so I'll go click on that, and sure enough, it highlights all the files, and I'll hit restore, and it'll say, we're going to restore your OneDrive to what it was on the 27th with 98 changes. Sort of huge example of a benefit, not just end user benefits for syncing and sharing your files, but IT benefits for things like data loss prevention and point-in-time restore. This is actually something an end user could do instead of IT, but it's an example of something that takes a huge burden off IT.
And it's huge because they're essentially store. This is also platform and Windows version agnostic, so you can always roll back to the version that you know is still healthy and the one that you want to get to.
Yeah, great.
Super cool. So beyond that, so SharePoint and OneDrive are really the kind of the engine and the kind of the underpinnings of collaboration in Office 365. We've also done a lot of work in terms of things like co-authoring to make those scenarios possible.
Yeah, you bet. And so in this world where we want more seamless collaboration, again, people not forwarding around old attachments and forking them and sort of merging things back, we brought up Microsoft Excel. I'm running the desktop version of Excel, you're running the browser version, and we announced not too long ago that the general availability of real-time co-authoring in the Excel desktop version. I can see you're playing Andy in this case, and I can see exactly where you are in the spreadsheet, and you could go ahead and change some numbers and it would update the graph. And we're bringing this to the Mac as well fairly soon, so at that point we will have Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Win32, Mac, mobile, web, the full matrix of co-authoring capabilities, only in the cloud with Office 365, OneDrive, and SharePoint. And I can go in and obviously see a lot more information. Say I want to see an activity feed of that document. And say we wanted to bring a third person into the conversation working on that document. I'll click on the share button, and sure enough, that same exact sharing dialog I saw in Windows, I could see it in the Mac Finder, I'd see it in the web in OneDrive and SharePoint. That same UI, exactly the same, shows up in the Office applications.
So very cool. So really powerful new file experiences really cross all the different OneDrive experiences. We didn't even show mobile, but there's some great stuff there as well. I love how the sharing dialogue is consistent around all the different experiences that you have, as you just showed. But I know it's been another huge year in terms of SharePoint updates. So why don't we take a look at SharePoint and look at what you're most excited about on that side?
I would be glad to show you some new SharePoint.
After all, you are Mr. SharePoint.
Yes. So I think as people saw, May of last year, we announced what we called the future of SharePoint, where we really made a huge new investment in the user experience of SharePoint, as well as the development model. And so for people who may be running SharePoint 2010, 2013 on-prem, even 2016, what you have looks nothing like this. This is something we've worked incredibly hard on the last 2 years. We've got a great page layout of marketing leaders, the people in the team, news articles, video from Stream. We've got this survey here. We could say we want to go to Disney World, and the mini golf event was great. That's a Microsoft Forms survey embedded right in the page. We've got important documents we want to highlight for the team, so we're using the power of the Microsoft Graph and intelligence to surface the documents that might be relevant for the team. And this is something, again, for people who haven't seen the latest SharePoint user experience, dramatically easier. You don't need SharePoint Designer, a web developer, anything like that to do these sorts of page layouts. I could pull this design part up, and I can add sections, multi-column layouts, featured web parts that people are familiar with. But if I go hit and expand this, you can see all the new parts I can add to SharePoint. Highlighted content, lists, and then a whole bunch of parts that are coming for integration with third-party applications like Salesforce and Trello and so forth, GitHub. So we're really excited about how simple we can make this. And just to show inside one of these parts, the sort of customization capabilities. Let's go into this news part. We'll go click on this.
Okay.
And it's pretty simple. Say I want to highlight the top story, I can go ahead and do that, publish the document, publish the page, and then I'm done. So really dramatically simpler, faster, and all this has a mobile app associated, the SharePoint mobile app. We have native code that will bring this in very high performance. Next thing we thought we'd show is sometimes you want these pages that lay out different parts. Sometimes you just want to bring the capabilities of Office 365 and have them feel like part of the SharePoint site. A great example of that is Planner. We love Planner for task management and so forth. Some people want a dedicated UI for it. Some people said, hey, I really don't want to have to think about that, and so we can put it in the page inside SharePoint, and you can see this Kanban view of to-do, launch events, messaging, and branding, where I can sort and organize things and move them around and so forth. And I get these rich previews, and looks like we have a connectivity issue there. But that's a preview of the Planner web part that's going to be coming out inside SharePoint.
So very cool. So you can see you can interact with the plans. You can easily also, as we saw here, you got to kind of reformat the pages, add the different web parts. It's super exciting seeing all of the third-party web parts come in, because I've been covering this since day one, and it was a small list, and now it's just this massive amount of selection there. So those are some SharePoint experiences, but I know that we're doing a bunch of work in terms of bringing SharePoint directly into some of the other Office 365 key experiences. So why don't you show us Teams first?
Yeah. So we made a big set of announcements about Microsoft Teams this week, including the convergence of the Skype for Business functionality into Teams. Now you can continue to run and use Skype for Business, but there's a lot of people who said they'd want a unified client for real-time communications, and Teams is going to do that and surface that capability in. But we're also allowing people to have tighter integration with Teams and SharePoint. And so you can see this conversation view for this team, strategy and planning team. We're in the general conversation, and you can see the tight interaction with SharePoint. So we've had a conversation going on around the mission. It's one of these rich SharePoint pages. We've got a document, an employee handbook, that we could do real-time co-authoring and chats around that document in Word. There's all sorts of fun things you can do with Teams as well, but since we've only got time to really focus on OneDrive and SharePoint, I thought I'd show the new integration where you could pull the whole team site UI into Teams. We sort of hide the Chrome and just bring the body of the content in. You can bring individual articles in. So you again have that powerful content management capabilities of SharePoint combined with the communication capabilities of Teams into a unified Office 365 collaboration solution. So that we're really excited about that, and as you can see, there's lots of things you can add to Teams, including multiple modules from SharePoint.
So very cool. So we're seeing the integration there in terms of bringing Teams content. And the other thing to note with Teams and SharePoint and OneDrive is that basically SharePoint and OneDrive are powering all the file storage, the file management within Teams. So anytime that you store a file there, it's being opened via SharePoint, so you get the Office Online kind of previewer and edit modes. Anytime that you work on a file, it's audited, all the compliance controls apply, and you can do things like co-authoring, because at the end of the day, it's a centrally stored file on SharePoint, and all that stuff works. But let's go out of kind of the micro team work, and now if we want to expand that out to organization-wide communication, we've done some really great work in terms of being able to get the word out and really make content discoverable across our org.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we worked on the new UI for SharePoint. I showed a version of it in a team site, using the team site template. This is a new template we rolled out in August called a communication site for companies and groups to broadcast their message. Just a ton of new capabilities here. What we really did is look at all the ways people built intranets and tried to make building a beautiful high performance site that rendered fast in the mobile app or in a mobile browser, just terrific, supporting accessibility out of the box and so forth. And so this is what is with no customization, the out-of-box communication site. We call this the hero web part. You see a lot of similar things on the internet with standard parts, and one of my favorite things is if you watch the text approach up to the balloon as I scroll. That's called parallax scrolling.
Looks great.
Really gives your site a polished look and feel. You can see those news articles. News from SharePoint sites can roll up into a common news view inside SharePoint. and then events, resources, and as we scroll down, we can see Yammer conversations inside SharePoint. In this case, in Teams, we are working together to build something. It's called the inner loop. In this kind of site, a more community destination, we sort of talk about that as the outer loop, how you're working across your organization. It's not a common team working day to day, and so Yammer's great for that. We integrated Yammer inside SharePoint, and so that's the big thing I sort of want to leave you with on this is SharePoint is the content management system and intranet tool for Office 365. Integrates with all our communication tools. Again, content plus communication equals collaboration, and we give you a unified solution, Office 365.
So we saved the best thing for last. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, yeah. We'll assume that's for all previous demos because
yes.
as usual, I'm trying to get too much in.
Or they were applauding when they saw the Admin Center. So we've done a lot of work for you and IT and the admins out there. Once they saw Admin Center, it was like they had to applaud for this because this is awesome. This is a revised new experience.
This is great. Yeah, as we got going on SharePoint, we really focused the design team initially on the end user facing UI, but about 6-9 months ago, I said to the team, okay, we've got a great plan for the end user UI. Let's go rethink the information architecture for the admin UI, have our design team work through it, have our research team work with different customers and see their roles managing the service, and see if we can simplify managing SharePoint for IT as well as end users. And this is the home of our new admin center, and you can see what we hear from IT is most relevant, like what types of files are people using, what sites, what's the activity and the site usage and so forth. Surface in changes from the message center in Office 365 right there, the service health. So the key stuff is right on the home page.
And they're all interactive reports. You're just clicking on whether you wanted to view certain things, so very, very cool.
And so the last thing, and I think we'll close with this, is we spent a lot of time looking at how people manage all sorts of SharePoint sites, and we've got a new management view where you can sort of group and sort these and filter them. So say I wanted to go through this list and see how our communication sites are doing, and I can filter that template, I can take a look at them, I can sort of multi-select and say email the admins for just those 2 sites and say, hey, how's it going in your communication sites? What do you think of the product right there?
Or maybe the last activity's been a while ago, so you might want to say, hey, you still using this site?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a pretty quick tour. We went from OneDrive, both on the desktop and in the web. We talked about Office collaboration, activities, co-authoring, sharing, right within the Office applications, only against Office 365. Team sites, communication sites, integration of Yammer inside communication sites, integration of a team site inside Microsoft Teams, showing a lot of flexibility and composability of our collab experience. And then we closed on the admin UI.
So awesome to see all this great work delivered in SharePoint and OneDrive for Business, all the integration across the different experiences, even Windows. But what's next?
What's next is, well, we have to finish our talks the rest of the week. One of the best things we get out of these events is the feedback from customers in the talks, in the booths, and we'll literally go back next week and we'll start writing the 2018 plan, even as we finish shipping this, to hear both some of the ideas we have about how we could use new technologies like AI in SharePoint, but also sort of the things we hear from you and feedback. And we've got the SharePoint conference is back. We'll do that in May of next year to share the roadmap. Obviously Ignite's the big event. We'll be back next year. But making sharing and access to your files simpler in OneDrive, making team collaboration amazing between teams and team sites, communication sites, helping people build the best intranets faster than ever before. We didn't actually get to talk about the developer stuff, whether it's rapid development in Power Apps and Flow, or professional development with REST and JavaScript. So we've got a lot on our plate, and we're very eager to hear in the events this week what people want us to do next.
And we saw a lot of integration here also with Graph and some of the intelligence coming into SharePoint.
Yeah, oh man, I didn't show search. That's my fault. This is a great week for search at Microsoft, leveraging the AI behind the Microsoft Graph, where we're learning, it's the first, what we're doing is really the first personalized enterprise search engine, where we've taken the things we built in the Graph and Delve and learning based on what you do and who you work with, surfacing the most relevant documents to people, and then exposing that in everything from Cortana and Bing, and of course your internet built on SharePoint. And we're going to go work really closely with the AI and research team at Microsoft to take that graph search that you see in SharePoint to the next level.
Very cool. So if you're new to SharePoint or any of this, where should people go to learn more?
I think there's a lot of great places. There's the Microsoft Tech community online where we put our blog posts and have discussions. We've got events around the world. I've sort of been humble and proud that the SharePoint community is the best community in technology. They do these free SharePoint Saturday events around the world. I was just in one a few months ago in Minnesota, 40 different sessions, 500, somebody did the same
from
thing.
Minnesota back there.
My mom's from Minnesota, go Gophers. And 500 people, 40 sessions for free, and so the community events are a great thing, and obviously this is the best, like the most intense way to learn, and there's a lot of great sessions here. If you can't make all the ones you're interested in, we're putting them online, of course, and the way we've rolled up all this information is aka.ms/SPIgnite. That's where you get the overview of all the sessions, and aka.ms/SPIgnite sessions. SPIgnite is the blog post. SPIgnite sessions is the session. So
very cool.
Lot of options.
So everybody make sure you get involved with SharePoint, all the updates, all the community events that we have. Of course, make sure that you enable things like first release in Office 365
Definitely.
and keep checking the message center for all the updates as they hit. And of course, we're going to cover all the updates in Microsoft Mechanics. Thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.